This is a podcast produced by Ashridge Business School. The challenge of local leadership. Leadership within organisations, especially those delivering key public services at the local level, has never been more important. But growing demands are leading to even greater challenges. Ashridge Business School is supporting organisations and leaders across the local public sector. Here, one local leader discusses what they have learned about leadership, the challenges of change, and prospects for the future.
I'm Pryce. I'm the principal of Bedford College, and I've been in the post 10 years. I hope I've learnt to use the authority you assume as a leader, but also the limits to and the responsibilities that come with that position. Like anything, actually, practice makes you better. I've also learned that you can make mistakes if you're open about them and learn from them. So that's quite important. What's striking over the last decade is the amount of time I now have to spend externally, outside the college, on what might be termed reputation management, and gaining an understanding of our competitive and comparative position against other colleges and other providers. So I've got to find out what others are doing and how we're perceived, and then promoting the college successes and the college offer. So I spend a lot of time doing that. But internal leadership is also very important, especially as we've grown our staff significantly from 250 staff to 680 over those 10 years. So I've spent a lot of time within a complex organisation communicating and leading in that way, so that's another change. The external challenges are probably similar to most public service organisations. Our customers, particularly students and employers, are becoming more demanding. They want a more personalised service. And they want to exercise more control over the content, quality and the price of what we deliver. Government here, both locally and nationally, is a challenge. More at the micro level though, in the big picture terms, we find that what government want is pretty similar to what our community wants, and it matches our own objectives. The challenges for us really are dealing with the frustration of constant changes in the funding arrangements, the proliferation of targets and pots of money for which we have to bid for. The key challenge, also the other key challenge, is probably the competition from new providers, particularly from the private sector now. I mean, in a way that's quite a challenge that I welcome, because I think if you've got somebody to compare us with, I think people will come to the conclusion that colleges do offer very good value for money. Our internal challenges are about sharpening up our act, given the likely squeeze on funding. People work very hard here, but we need to be more productive, and that means cutting out activity that we're not so good at or has a low value. And we're not traditionally very good at stopping doing things. Attracting and promoting talent is also a challenge in some areas, and we need to become much more innovative to meet the external demands, particularly if people want personalised services. We have to learn to deliver those. In a recession, we usually expect to get more young people staying on, and we've certainly seen that this time round. Unusually this time round, employers seem to not be cutting back on training in the way that they have in previous recessions. We think that's because they appreciate that if they look after the staff they're going to retain, that will help them when the good times come in the future. So that's one of the things we are experiencing. Our commercial fully paid for work is growing surprisingly fast, even now during the recession. We're also finding it easier to attract staff, which is, I suppose, a flip side of the recession, that the public sector does offer sort of greater security. So in some areas we are attracting talent in a way that we haven't done before, and that's very welcome, but obviously we've got to keep hold of those people through the good times as well. On the downside, there are some significant funding constraints, and this sometimes prevents us meeting the demands that are out there. So again, that's quite a challenge. And the recession does pose challenges for us. I think government is not well geared to allowing us the sort of flexibility we sometimes need to meet local demand, and that's something we talk to government officials about a fair amount. We could find new ways of doing things, but we have to make sure we don't break any rules in doing that. I think also the last 5 to 7 years have been relatively benign in financial terms. We've had growth funding that's always been available, and therefore cost control hasn't been as important as it now is. So we have to get back into that quite tough financial mindset that we perhaps had in the early 90s. And again, there aren't many people around in the college that remember those days, so that's a challenge too. Well, our staff satisfaction levels are extremely high, and they've risen very fast over the last 4 years. They're almost double the average for a FE college, and we're very proud of that. But even so, we're finding the lack of a stable funding platform, where we don't know the funding in broad terms over the next 3-4 years, is very destabilising for our staff. And obviously, they do reflect on the economic conditions. And we have to be alert to that they are worried. And therefore, in terms of our own behaviour, we have to give reassurance where we can, but we must be honest with people. And I think the other thing we can do to help people is we've noticed people are beginning to want to develop themselves more, give themselves more flexibility and more scope so they can do more things within the college. And that's a reasonable response, and I think particularly as a college we are going to help staff do that. And prepare themselves for that environment. It is difficult though if you're in an area, say for example construction, where the student numbers are falling away. Not surprisingly, staff are worried about their jobs. And we have to be open and honest about how realistic it is to maintain the staff numbers that we have in the medium term. The good news is often the increase in the full-time student numbers does offer our staff the opportunity to switch to other provision. So we wouldn't envisage making any significant redundancies. As long as we can plan into a couple of years ahead, we can usually adjust through natural wastage. I think we can always do more, particularly in terms of communicating with staff. That's always the best use of my time and the manager's time. I think we underestimate sometimes how much reassurance we have to give people, so they don't decide that there isn't a future for them. And I think we have to look at the communication channels we've got, and to use those and see if they're appropriate, and make it much more regular. So that's one of the key things. I suppose the second thing is to really help people develop themselves so they're better placed to survive a recession and to improve their lives afterwards. Well, our staff surveys, as I said earlier, would suggest that people feel generally very well satisfied. When we ask them why, the two factors that shine out are their colleagues and our students. And I think in a way that's where people's strength comes from, that they're doing a very moral job in further education. We're helping people improve their lives, which is obviously a good thing, and makes people feel good about themselves as well. So that's I think where the strength comes from. I think the hope, particularly for our staff, does come from looking around and assessing ourselves in comparative terms. So the fact that we've had an outstanding Ofsted inspection, the fact that we've got very strong financial resources, the fact that we've got a good reputation locally and with employers and with the community. All of those things mean that we can, often in a recession, there are even more opportunities for people in our position. And I think that's what gives them the hope, and the fact that actually they get support from their colleagues as well on a day-to-day basis.
For more information, please visit www.ashridge.org.uk/local.